So again, I am Tracy Holmes. I am a developer advocate at HashiCorp. And let's begin. If you have questions, if you mistakenly put them in the chat, I'll try to grab them. But if you want me to see them, please use the Q&A as stated. But absolutely ask questions throughout. I will try my best to spend 8 minutes per section on this so we have a little bit of time and I can catch those questions from you. So let me share my screen and we will begin. All right. Do I see myself? I do. All right. So you did the thing. Now what? You decided that I have this project that I really, really like, but for whatever reason, this particular Reddit app has not done this one feature and I really, really want to help. Oh, look, they're open source. How about that? Well, what do I do now that I know I want to help them? So I use Notion. I do not have slides. I'm more of an interactive speaker. So you will get a link to this particular Notion section so that if you want to go back and look at what we talked about, that kind of thing, you can absolutely do that. So let me give you a little background on me. In tech years, I'm ancient. I've been in tech for quite a while. My trip and journey over to software engineering only happened roughly 4 years ago. I am known for being an almost Austin, Texas local because I've lived there so much and or so many times. And the last time I went there, I got this itch because I became affiliated with Women Who Code and decided I wanted to learn how to code. My brain likes puzzles. My brain likes trying to figure things out. Coding 9 times out of 10 has multiple ways to attack an issue. And so it works well with my brain. When I was a kid, I always took things apart, including my dad's truck. He did not like that. I had to learn how to put it together. But also, we weren't rich. We were working class. And so I had to put them back together if I wanted things to continue working. And I did not want to get in really, really big trouble. That being said, break fix comes naturally to me. And it served well when I was a sysadmin. And so now I decided I wanted to learn how to code. I was drawn to OS projects mostly because they're open. I like the idea of open outside of all the licensing, which is actually in a different track, I believe. So if you get to learn about licensing today, please do. It's confusing, but it's great. But I like dealing with the community. And I'm very much a light bulb person. So if I can help someone let that light bulb flick on, I'm down. What I knew and what I thought I knew. So what I knew is I wanted to work on open source stuff because, like I said, I'm big on helping people. I thought it was cool providing things for people to use and or improve upon. And the fact that someone from the community could decide to help and make an impact on a project that may have 1 or 2 maintainers that's doing that on the side in addition to a full-time job is amazing. I thought my previous customer service and client-facing skills would prepare me, even though the world was new to me. And if you've ever worked as a server in a restaurant, you'll know what it's like working those tables on a Friday night for the very first time. It's scary, but it's exciting, but it's also scary. I had no idea what I was getting into. So interactions. How can I be effective at communicating with the community? We are all customers. At the end of the day, whether I'm working as a software engineer, if I'm working as a developer advocate that's hugely informed by my software engineering side. At the end of the day, if I have an issue with my electricity, if I have an issue with a product I bought, heck, if I have an issue with my iPhone, I am a customer. And we get mad about things. So community guidelines can absolutely help with interacting with the community. So I'm going to go into but I'm going to throw on my maintainer hat. Apologies. Please, could someone let me know if they can still hear me? My computer decided to switch my microphone input all of a sudden for some strange reason. If you type it in the chat, I can see it. Thank you very much, Tatiana. So I'm going to throw on my maintainer hat for a second and tell you ideally how things are supposed to go. So one of the co-founders of HashiCorp, Mitchell, he uses something called Apple. And so if I translate that to open source software, it's approach, make sure you let the contributor know you appreciate them raising an issue. Probe, ask more questions or politely push back if you need to get that missing info. Present, set realistic expectations. And trust me, I get it. realistic expectations, especially for my particular company, can kind of get a little hinky. AWS will decide one morning while they're going to the bathroom that they just want to release a feature. Microsoft sometimes will fix things, break it, and then by the time you come back on Monday after fixing it, it's broken again. That's life, though. And those are companies. There's a lot of stuff. So do what you can and let the users know when you can. Listen. So the open source community can be mean at times. And some of that absolutely is on purpose. That's just the nature of people. Some are just frustrated. Like I said, we're all customers at the end of the day, whether it's a free product or not. My particular company actually has an open source maintainer Slack for feedback and response review when that happens. And I ideally, I would think that other companies have similar, where it's just kind of like a support group for, hey, I need to give this person this type of feedback. How should I best phrase this? And at the end, ideally, a maintainer will let the user contributor know that, hey, we appreciate your help. These are the next steps. Throw in a smiley, one that's a pretty nice smiley, and it'll go a long way. So to say all that, it's not easy. Those are the things that we should do or should be able to do on any given day. You never know how many maintainers a project has. It could be one person, like I said, doing whatever project on the side of a 50-hour-a-week job. Also, let me give my dog a treat, because if I don't, he's going to start barking. Community guidelines can help with that. And so what community guidelines are, they're just that, guidelines on how to interact with the community. How can I make sure that my community is a safe space, an inclusive space, that kind of thing. And so in the community guidelines, you typically find 2 or 3 things. You'll find the README, the code of conduct, and a contributing guide. So the README is often the first thing you see when you're visiting a repository. And it basically gives you 5 things. What the project does, or it should give you 5 things. What the project does, why the project is useful, how the users can get started with the project, where the users can get help with the project, and who maintains and contributes to the project. And I will go to I'm going to go to a repo to show you these things in a little bit. The code of conduct is, I feel like, one of the most important parts, because it's the thing that's responsible for making sure that everyone's safe, what to do if they don't feel safe, and that everything is inclusive. The code of conduct is there to protect everyone participating in the project, as it defines standards for how to engage with the community. And it signals an inclusive environment that respects all contributions. It outlines the procedures for addressing the problems between members of the project's community. Then we also have the contributing guide, which is where all the guidelines on how to actually contribute to the project are located. And in the general sense of this particular talk, that's probably the part that we all kind of want to really talk about the most. So where in the world do we find all of this stuff? You find it in the project's root directory. And so let's go really quick over to 2. I picked one for my job that I felt was a good example, and one that I've contributed to in a minor way. So when I was learning when I was learning Golang, one of the resources that I used was a book called Learn Go with Tests. It's an open source book. It actually lives on Gitbook, but the repo is freely available. And so this particular author is very open to feedback, submitting issues, and that kind of thing. So the root directory is basically just saying it's in the main path of the repo. And for the contributing guide here, it should be down here somewhere. If I don't find it, I had it. I don't know where it went, so we'll come back to it. Yeah, let's go to the README instead. So whenever you get on the repo, if you go to the README, it'll also typically link to the contributing guide. But this is what the README looks like. And as you see, it has a link to the contributing guide. We're actually going to come back and talk about the contributing guide more later. This one lives in the root directory. In the particular provider repo that I chose from my company, it no longer lives outside of the README. It no longer lives in the main directory. It used to live in something called the .github directory, which is basically a hidden directory. And that's where like the issue templates and stuff live. So it used to live in here. And we're going to talk more about issue templates and that kind of thing lately. But if you hear me mention the .github, that's what I'm talking about. That .github folder it lives on the default branch. It can be home to community help files like the contributing guide, issue templates, and code of conduct. If you have more than one, like if you have something outside of the README and you have all of the other things, you can usually group it under that hidden directory. Okay, so how do you determine what to work on? So let's talk about different types of things that you can work on. You can work on roughly 3 things. These are usually the general things across the board: documentation, bugs, and or features. So your documentation is going to be things like typos, screwed up code samples, missing code samples, or even suggestions. These are all good contributions. And if you've ever heard me speak before, you will know I am known for saying documentation counts and that it will be on my tombstone. That is the hill I will die upon. Bugs. So your bugs are going to be like the filter's not working properly, example-based codes not returning the correct info, things that you can let the maintainers know about. And then we also have features. So if you decide, like I used a Reddit app earlier, say like Apollo or something, and you decide that you have an idea for the formatting, you want some more detail when you're using it, you want something changed because you don't like how it looks on your particular phone, then you can file that as a feature request. And even if they don't agree, most maintainers will get back with you and say, hey, this is not a thing that we can do, and this is why. What I said a few minutes ago is that I'm very big on documentation. And I still feel like even when I first came in, that people don't consider documentation good contributions. And contributing is only related to code. If you believe that, if you internalize that, I need you to take this particular statement whenever I share this Notion app, copy it, and paste it somewhere that you can see it every day. A contribution is a contribution. And I felt like that. And to this day, I probably do still feel like that. We have a lot of senior engineers that forget what it was like to be a junior sometimes. I also know that a lot of senior engineers are routinely working on teams where they don't have enough people on the team. So if they're so busy working on the code, who's taking care of the documentation? They may miss something, they may copy paste, we might have bad copy pasta, whatever. If you see a typo in something, absolutely use that as your first introduction into contributing to that particular project. If they missed a semicolon, if they missed the highlighting feature, if you notice the markdown is messed up, submit that issue. And while you're at it, put in a pull request. They will appreciate you. I have a coworker now where we just did a live stream and he was very adamant that documentation is on his list. But if you have to go back and fix all of the documentation, that's not a one-day job. So yes, I'm sorry, I will get off of my soapbox. All of that to say this, the engineers don't always catch the mistakes. So that's what the community is there for. The Learn Go with test book was actually my very first contribution to an outside repo, or one of the first. I was learning and I realized that there was output that he was giving in the book that did not match up with the output that I was returning in my terminal, and I was using the same version and everything that should have been used. And I put in an issue, and he very politely said, "If you want to do a pull request for it, go for it. Look at what you need to do in order to get that done." And I submitted it, and he merged it, and I was like, "Hey, I was able to contribute to something that I actually used, and I can go back and look at that and go, I did that." So those are the different types of things that you can work on. So let's talk about labels. And if you think about labels like your t-shirt labels, you're not wrong. Just remember, if you don't have a label, you don't know what size t-shirt you're wearing. So if you rip it out, how do you know? GitHub says, and I'm going to use GitHub's definition of a label. Labels on GitHub help you organize and prioritize your work. And I would think that that also applies to other version control systems. Like I use GitLab for my private stuff or my personal stuff. You can apply labels to issues and pull requests to signify priority, category, or any other information that you find useful. But how do you even know how to navigate the labels? So let's go look at that. How do you know how to navigate them? And how do you even know where to find them? And don't forget, if you have any questions or you want me to go back so you can see something, absolutely pop that in the Q&A or even the chat, and I will do my best. So you won't see labels in the main code, in the main part of the repository. What you have to do is when you're looking at issues, this is how you will find your labels. And it's literally a label drop down at the top. These are not always consistent, especially if it's a big project or different tools or that kind of thing exists. Sometimes they can be siloed and or isolated, and they use their own labeling system. For the most part, the basics are usually there, like good first issue or help wanted, things like that, or even Hacktoberfest, because Hacktoberfest has gotten so popular. So like for this one, the author even has one for boosting his ego, which I think is hilarious. But a bug, you want to label something as a bug. That way, if you decide to go in and you want to start working on bugs, like you feel confident that you want to go past documentation, you can go and filter things by bugs. This is a duplicate tag. It's kind of self-explanatory. Sometimes people don't, if it's a big project, people don't always want to go through 500 issues. They'll just file another issue. And a lot of times it's a duplicate of another issue. So that's what the duplicate tag is for. Good first issue. We'll talk about that a little bit, I think, in the next section. Help wanted, literally, we need some help with this particular one. New chapter, in this case, he's writing a book. So a new chapter would be the label. And then question or won't fix. So I mentioned earlier that they will tell you if they will fix something or they will add a feature, or if they want to add a feature. There's a label for that. And if you decide you want to see what bugs are in this particular repository, click on bug and it will filter everything as a bug. So it doesn't look like there are any current bugs. So let's go over to the other repo from my job. Now, this particular repo has 2,000 issues. And now you can see where those the labeling system starts to come in handy. Especially if it's color coded. All the bugs are going to be red. All of the crashes are going to be red. If we're talking about a specific version or testing, it looks like that's green. If something needs triage, which means it needs a closer look to make sure that it's getting thrown to the right area or right person that's responsible for that particular thing, that's what that is. And you'll notice labeling for a company is probably different from the one for the book, in that we have a breaking change, which means if we decide this issue is valid, but if we decide to implement a fix for this issue, it's going to break the functionality of said tool. Bugs, self-explanatory, we just talked about that. A crash is literally that. You were working on something and it crashed. When you have a crash, it will give you output. Use that output when you do your in that issue. And that's how we know that it needs to be labeled as a crash. Enhancements, you will see feature requests and or enhancements used interchangeably a lot of times. So if you have a feature request, make sure that you don't ask where that label is. It might actually be labeled as an enhancement. Examples, GitHub Actions is pretty new across the board because that's fairly new. Good first issue, like we saw in the other repo. Hacktoberfest, like we saw in the other repo. So you will see some of the same things. Needs triage. So you do have some general labeling systems that are across the board on projects. So let's go back here. We've already discussed what the labels mean. So I mentioned, so what issues are good for newbies? And I still love these. And then I have a slightly smaller soapbox. So how to find newbie-friendly labels. So to track new contributors, issues with labels that start with good first issue or help wanted are featured on that dashboard that I just showed you. That's usually across the board. The small soapbox I have is sometimes people forget that what is a good first issue to them is exceptionally difficult for a newbie. And so this is me saying, maintainers, find a way to add a note or something in there to let them know, hey, this is a good first issue, but if you're not comfortable with this, like put that in your contributing guide, or let them know, hey, when we say good first issue, this is what we mean. Help wanted, if you know that you're knowledgeable about the code base, whether it's in Python, if it's in Ruby, if it's in Go, in this particular instance, we use Go at our company for the most part, then help wanted won't necessarily be easy. but you'll know that they specifically need something or need assistance on that particular thing. And we just looked at good first issues or help wanted. And if someone wants me to go back and like filter out by what those may look like in either of those repositories, pop that in the chat. I have no problem going back. If you see nothing geared towards newbies, you can approach this one or two ways. If you don't want to do documentation and you want to start, you've gotten more confident in your contributions or in your knowledge of said code base or language that they're using, ping the maintainer. Say, hey, look, I really want to help you out with this. I notice you don't have this. Are you all going to have any good first issues coming up in a new feature soon? Do you anticipate needing help for something? Because a lot of times, especially if it is a side project, they may have just forgotten to label something. And you may giving them that nudge by asking that question will let them know, hey, okay, I have somebody here that really wants to help. Let me go see what I can find. And they may just get back to you and say, hey, give me 24 hours, give me 72 hours, give me whatever, and check back and I'll see if I can get some stuff for you. All in all, to be completely honest, it's all about communication. The open source community thrives on communication. And when that communication is not there, that's when things start to crumble. So examples of resources that are focused on helping people make their first PR. I've changed this a little bit. I used to be all in on Hacktoberfest, but I realized there are other things that people can use. And if you want me to click on these, I can also do that. But whenever you get the link to this particular talk, these are all linked. So you should be able to click on them to go to their pages, the associated pages. Hacktoberfest is the most popular one, I think, in that everybody knows about the t-shirt. And it's usually, let me guess, October. Open Source Friday. I don't know that many people know about Open Source Friday, but if you click on that link, it's going to take you to a page that basically says, hey, try to take some time out every Friday to give back to the community by contributing to this particular project or one of these projects. And it'll help you decide what you want to work on. First timers only is just that. That's a really, really good one for people that have never, ever, ever in their life made a PR. And you will see that tag in certain repos, and they love it. They will link you to something where you can do that one little thing to get to that first PR. And I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but that adrenaline rush from seeing something you've done like get merged and it's in a thing, it's great. Like, it's great. First Timers Only has a link to resources. It will also help you find out what you want to work on. First Timers Only, if I'm not mistaken, still has a Twitter bot. So if you don't remember to go to the page to check on things, absolutely subscribe to that Twitter handle. And whenever they post, you'll get a notification and turn on the notification so you can get a notification when they post new things. That's what I ended up doing because when you get busy, you kind of just don't think about the 90 Chrome tabs you have open in multiple windows. And then 24 pull requests. 24 pull requests didn't do anything last year, but it's usually in December on the days leading up to Christmas. And you're supposed to do a pull request a day. What they do still have is also external. They have links to external resources or repos that they know need help. So all of these are all active pages that you can click on as soon as you get this. And let's see. Let's go back to contributing guides. So what in the world is a contributing guide? We're going to go back to what GitHub says. So for the repo owner, contribution guidelines are a way to communicate how people should contribute. For contributors, so us, the guidelines help verify that we're submitting well-formed pull requests and opening useful issues. And then for all parties involved, the guidelines save time and hassle caused by improperly created PRs or issues that have to be rejected and resubmitted. Make note of that because we're going to walk through a checklist that I think is very well done. And you should have no questions once you go through that checklist. So we saw earlier where the contributing guide was for Learn Go with Test. It was in the main, it was in the root directory. In the AWS provider repo we looked at, I mentioned this, that it used to live in the .github directory we discussed, but now it lives in docs. So if you don't see something, if you go looking for the contributing guide and it's not in the root directory and it's .github, look for something that would indicate the documents are there. And 9 times out of 10, it'll probably be a docs folder. So we're going to walk through that a little bit. And I use it because, like I said, I think it's very well formed, but it has checkboxes. Utilize those checkboxes. So let's go look at that really quick. All right. So let's go back to the main page and we're going to go down to docs. Also, if you don't want to do it that way, 9 times out of 10, you can just go down here and click on a link directly to it. So let's do that. So first things first, they have, I remember when this didn't look like this, so I love this one. All right, so they have everything broken up into bullets. Before you can do anything, you have to get your environment set up. So this particular section will tell you your requirements. So hey, if you're using Go, you need to use 1.16 because you'll need it to build the provider plugin for this particular project. They'll tell you how to do testing. They'll also tell you what you need to do in order to make things work, where the paths, what paths you need, all that kind of stuff. The next thing is the issue reporting and the life cycle. And let me double check something before I go past where I am. Yeah, actually these two things will work together. So we'll just do it all at once. We're going to go through the contributing guideline and I'm going to associate it with the path to your first PR. On your way to your first PR, you need to ask yourself these questions. Am I submitting an issue? Am I submitting an issue and a fix for said issue? So a PR. Or have I found an existing issue that I'd like to fix? There are 3 types of issues. You've got bug reports, feature requests, and questions. And there are usually issue templates that you need to fill out, but the location and the type will vary depending on the project that you're contributing to. But these are the usual suspects. I will say if you found an issue you'd like to fix, make sure that no one else is already assigned to it. I'll show you what that looks like when we go back to the AWS provider repo. And if you don't see anyone assigned, just throw a note, throw a comment into that particular issue and say, hey, if no one's working on this, I would like to work on this. Usually the maintainer will get back to you in a reasonable time if they can and say, hey, go for it. No one else has this and thank you for your assistance. Before I flip over, yeah, an issue, actually you submitting an issue is still a contribution. How am I going to know there's an issue if you're not telling me about it? And how will I track said issue in the future in case it happens again? So whether you're providing a fix or not, make sure you're submitting an issue and follow any of the templates that make sure you fill out the corresponding info. So if you see, we have an issue reporting and lifecycle. And if you look at this, it has a breakdown for each of the 3 types that I told you about on issues, but it also has a checkbox. You can use these checkboxes. Once you clone the repo, just go in and have fun, or just take the raw and put it in a markdown file so you can have something to click. I like checklists. This works very well with me. It also will tell you what you need to do for your pull request submission. And I feel like if nothing else is important in this entire checklist, this is because if you don't follow the rules that they gave you for your pull request, you'll wonder why it's not being acted on. If they tell you needed to label something a certain way or you need to follow some sort of convention for the code, follow it. If you can follow this as closely as possible, then you shouldn't have any issues for it getting reviewed. When you don't and you just want to get a PR in for the sake of getting it done, you'll notice you'll get either pushback or no response at all. So make sure you follow these types of things. And in this instance, it will tell you about the life cycle. You will also find this. So if you are creating a branch, this particular project wants you to prefix it with specific things to denote specific things. So like if you're submitting a feature branch, you would start it off with feature, with F for feature, B for bug fix, D for documentation, that kind of thing. The other thing is they have a common review items. And so they have common practices that they want you to go through to make sure that everything's formatted correctly and that kind of thing, as well as link you to things like effective Go and Go code review comments. In case you're wondering, well, why do I have to do this? Click on Go code review comments and it'll let you know why. And these are the guidelines. Again, use these checklists. They're there for a reason. And what was the other thing? And then contribution types. They even have something to let you know what you need to do in the event of a documentation update. Enhancement or bug fix. Adding resources. Resources are specific to this particular project. It's something that they use. And if I show you the labels again, you'll see why. But yeah, contribution guidelines. So if you want to know what a resource is, this is a sidebar, sorry. This particular provider works a lot with services. So if you wanted to go look specifically for a service, I'm going to show you how this filtering works. If you want to look for a specific service and you know that you want to work on an API gateway issue, click on that and it will filter out everything associated with that. So that's where in these big projects, the labeling comes in handy and you can filter it down. You went from 2,000 issues to like 20 or 15 open ones. All right. And then I believe we have seeking help when you get stuck. All right. I think I can talk on this one without having to go into too much detail. If you get stuck, do not do what I did and get scared because you didn't want to admit that you were stuck. Don't get scared because you know this is your first time doing a PR or even your fifth time. It gets easier over time, but even at the fifth one, you're still new. You're scared that on your fifth PR, that senior engineer that maintains that project is going to think that you're stupid. You do not want to sit there and not do it because you don't know this person. And even though they gave you a list of rules, you still feel like you didn't do something. And so you're double and triple and quadruple checking yourself. And now you're second guessing yourself. And don't do what I did and just don't do anything at all. I said earlier, communication is king. Communication is key. I made a joke about Microsoft earlier, but I'll give you a specific instance and you'll see why. That actually did happen on one thing where something was broken. We found a workaround. It was working over the weekend. And when we came back to work Monday, it was broken again. And we were like, what the? Another instance was I was working on a specific feature and it didn't work. And it kept not working. And I knew, like, I inherently knew it was working. It should be working. It wasn't until 3 or 4 days later when I finally said something to one of the engineers on the team and they went, oh, that's a bug. And then I turned my screen off and I went away and I took a very long walk. So I didn't say words that I didn't need to say out loud. And then I came back and I went, why didn't you tell me? And it was, I didn't even think about it. And so had I mentioned that I was having that particular issue, that would have saved an extra 48 hours worth of time, 48, 72 hours worth of time. So communicate. If you get stuck, there's usually a community. Some places have Discords for their support. Like if you have an issue and you want to talk to somebody about it, their community might have a Discord. They may have a subreddit. And I know what people think about Reddit. Treat Reddit like public TV. Change the channel if you don't like it. Just go for what you know and walk back out. Or they may have a dedicated Slack channel. Or in our case, at my company, we also have a discuss forum, which is where you can go specific to a provider or a tool or something like that, and people can respond. Ask for help. You are not the only one having whatever issue it is that you're having. Somebody had to go through it. They may not have called it the exact same thing. They may not have phrased it the exact same way. But if you can post that log and you can post that issue and let them know what's going on, 9 times out of 10, somebody will help. I will say 9.5 times out of 10. Somebody will say, oh, yeah, I remember that. Let me show you what you need to do. And then you move on. But do not do anything. Yeah. Don't just sit there and not do anything. Any contribution you have is important. Follow the rules, follow the list. Heck, reach out on Twitter. You'd be surprised how much Twitter will rally around people sometimes when they know that they're new and they just want to succeed. I actually didn't soapbox myself as much as I thought I would. So I have 10 more minutes. What I am going to do is say, if you all have any questions at all, please ask them. You can ask me about my experience as a software engineer. because that's where I started before I moved to developer advocacy. You can ask me what it was like because I actually came in as an apprentice, um, an older apprentice. But I'm Tracy P. Holmes, like literally everywhere. GitHub, Twitter, whatever. If you all want a link to this is where you will find this particular talk.
Feel free to put any questions you have in the Q&A interface. I see one in the chat window right now.
Oh, wait, did it pop up right after I clicked off? Oh, no, that was me. I think that might have been me putting my link in.
Yes, that was your link, sorry.
No worries. But no, that's my talk. No one had any questions? If you end up thinking of something, this particular Notion page will stay up. I am thinking about switching to Notist or spinning my website back up. And so it may. Oh, I have a question. All right, I'll answer that in a second. So this, if you don't see this info, I will put a placeholder in here so you all will know where to find the information on the tag. Okay. All right, Ruta, I hope I'm saying that correctly. I will post the link again in chat. And Amy had a question, and so let's see what that question was. Thank you, I appreciate that. Let's see, there are a bunch of cold school learners from Momentum in Durham. What advice do you have for folks starting out? So when I first started out, again, I was going to Women Who Code. I probably could have claimed gas money for the amount of mileage I drove all over Austin going to events until I figured out what I wanted to do. So meetups are a good way to network. When I was with Women Who Code, I found myself drawn to Ruby. I absolutely adored Ruby and still do. And we had a Ruby Tuesday meetup. And so that was a good place where we would have people come and talk. But then you also had people that were working in that same language that you work shoulder to shoulder with. I know that's more difficult now that we're in the pandemic times, but in the before times, it was really helpful. The other thing that some people don't know is that I did attend a code school for a while. And, you know, to be completely honest, I will tell you one thing if I don't tell you anything else about this particular question. Get on Twitter. I have a job because of Twitter. I have a job because of two things. I was on Twitter and I had a person that I had recently met that didn't mind fussing at me like they were my auntie or my mother. And they made me apply because they knew my background. I still to this day, and I know a lot of people like to say, and I promise I'm not making it political, but a lot of people like to think that women have bigger imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is real, but I have an issue where I am extremely literal about what I do and don't know sometimes to my detriment. This person knew my background and said, you need to apply. When I applied, I was able to DM the person on Twitter. I have found that more often than not, a lot of the job opportunities that I find and that I share to people are from Twitter. The people that are posting said job opportunities will open their DMs and you can ask them any questions you want. The other thing I would say about people that are in code school or just people that are starting out in general, find the way you learn. Oh, that's what I apologize. I forgot to add that bullet in here. Find the way you learn. I am very break fix. I am very hands-on. I need to break things down in order to figure out how they work. Like my brain works in examples and real world examples. Not everybody works that way. My coworker is a lot like me in that if you give me a video, if it's a 45-minute video, 3 hours later, we'll be finishing it. Like we don't do videos very well. We are very project-based though, because you get concrete deliverables. But we also we're checklist kind of people. When I was learning Go, all that I could find were Go resources. So the Learn Go with test, that and exorcism were the two things that finally got me on the track that I needed to go. And having an author of a book that's actually very receptive to feedback and questions was amazing. So I would say, yeah, at the very top of that list, learn how you learn. Not everybody's going to learn from a video. Not everybody's going to learn from a podcast. Some people, I have 3 notebooks sitting up here right now in addition to an entire library over there of physical books that I can highlight. I do find myself using my iPad a lot now for notes and drawing out things and stuff. And since I'm a checklist person, Notion also works very well with me. Yeah. The other thing, don't be afraid to ask questions. If you are in a code school or you are starting your journey, one, you have no, I want to say this and I don't want it to say it in a negative way. You have less of an excuse to not attend a meetup than you used to have in the before times because everything's virtual. Take advantage of those. If you are here today at this OS101 conference, it's wonderful. You've got hands-on workshops. You get to learn about licensing. You get to learn about how to adjust that git commit in 2 steps. You know how hard it is for me to adjust a git commit? I still have to Google that stuff like all the time. So don't be afraid to ask questions. You're nowhere near, you're not stupid, period, but you're definitely not as stupid as you think you are. Take that question, throw some quotes around it, throw it into Google, and go for it. But don't be scared. Like, don't be scared to walk up to people and to virtually walk up to people and ask them a question, because if you don't ask, you won't know. And I'm to the point now where I just ask. Anybody that knows me will tell you Tracy will ask. She may be very literal when she does it, but she's gonna ask, and I take that and I try to share the wealth. I don't know if that answered your question, Amy. If I need to go a little bit more into it, let me know.
So we have about 5 minutes remaining. I do see one additional question in the Q&A interface.
Oh, yeah, here we go. Let's see. Thank you. Ooh, mathematics. Whoosh. Let's see. No worries. Yeah, you can, any of you, ping me on Twitter. I don't mind. I will be absurdly honest with my feedback. I do have tact. I promise you I possess it. But I will absolutely try to give you a solid answer anytime that I can. You can also, yeah, you can try to add me on LinkedIn. I'm not huge on LinkedIn. Twitter's probably the best way. If my DMs aren't open, just add me and I'll see it. And then just say, hey, Tracy, I need to ask you a question. Or if you want to reference this, you can, and let me know. And I will do what I can. But yeah, if you can find a group, I am very big in women in Linux. I absolutely love the community because I do have a sysadmin DevOpsy background, but just being in that has opened me up to opportunities that I had no idea existed anywhere in the world. And it's ultimately that group is why I have where I am where I am now. I think I answered all of them. Thank you so much, everybody, for asking questions. I will post, I don't know if everybody got the link, but I will post it one more time before we get off of here. I really enjoyed this. Thank you so much.